Welcome to Hear Me Out, the podcast where real educators spark real conversation and amplify student voices. Join your host, Andrea, Christine, Freedom, Lindsay, and Brianna. Passionate educators committed to creating inclusive, accessible, and safe learning and play spaces for all students, especially those with diverse needs. In every episode, they dive into what matters most in education, from equity and empathy to innovation and impact. So grab your headphones and get ready to hear what truly matters, because every voice belongs. Welcome to Hear Me Out.
All right, welcome to Hear Me Out. I'm Andrea, and I'm joined by Christine, Freedom, Brianna, and Lindsay. We are educators who are passionate about making learning and play spaces inclusive, accessible, and safe for all students, especially those with diverse needs. Today, we are excited to launch the second episode of our podcast alongside our newly developed Inclusive Recess and Playground Guide, a resource designed for early childhood educators, primary educators, families, and even school boards.
Yes, and this information in the podcast was co-created with families to ensure it reflects real needs and authentic voices. It's aligned with open pedagogy, and the podcast will be shared on accessible platforms so school communities can adapt, reuse, and share it freely to support inclusive, joyful play for every child.
Okay, so we're really passionate about this topic. So let's start with what is inclusive play and why is it essential for children's well-being, human rights, and learning?
You're so right, Lindsay. This topic is definitely a passion of ours, one we often discuss within our classroom and in our communities. Inclusive play is play where every child, regardless of physical, cognitive, or emotional needs, can meaningfully participate, contribute, and experience joy. It's just not about being present, it's about being truly included. Inclusive play removes environmental, social barriers, enabling all children to engage in collaborative, social, and physical accessible play.
That's right. This matters so much because play is a human right. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child declares that every child has the right to rest, leisure, and play without discrimination. When we exclude children from play, intentionally or not, we violate those rights. According to BU, inclusion also supports mental health and emotional well-being, creating environments where all children feel they belong. Inclusive play also advances equity in education, meaning that support is based on individual needs, not on making everyone do the same thing.
You are right, Freedom. The Framework of Universal Design for Learning, UDL, offers practical guidelines for inclusive play. UDL encourages educators to design experiences that provide multiple means of engagement, representation, and expression. For example, a UDL-aligned playground must include sensory-rich play areas, sound walls, tactile panels, multiple types of seating or movement tools, low-cost tech tools like voice recorders for communication. BU explains that by designing play spaces with these UDL principles, we allow children to participate in ways that reflect their strengths and preferences.
So, right, inclusive play is not just about adding a ramp or a swing. It is about designing spaces that welcome everyone, regardless of their ability or their background. According to Sensory Trust Guide, truly inclusive play spaces are equally usable by all, where children of all abilities can take part in a meaningful way. They're flexible for diverse needs with options that support different ways of playing and interacting. And they're engaging across multiple levels of ability, offering rich sensory experiences and open-ended play opportunities. The Sensory Trust Guide also emphasizes that inclusion means thinking beyond physical access. It involves welcoming children with sensory, cognitive, and social differences and ensuring that play environments adapt to them, not the other way around. So, whether it's using natural elements, creating quiet spaces, or designing activities that encourage social interaction, accessible play should be responsive, not a one-size-fits-all.
For sure. And being at code is not enough anymore. So I'm just going to read and play you some little bits that are directly from some caregivers and children about their experiences with inclusive play. So the first one, we have a caregiver, and they stated that when my son can use the sandbox or pretend to be in the kitchen with his peers, he's not just participating, he's being seen. And that matters so much. I just want him to be safe and happy. And then the second one, we have a 5-year-old child. So I'm just going to play you a quick audio bit.
Me and my friends can play. Even though he cannot talk, we both like to run around. I like to give him hugs.
So adorable.
I know, I love that. So these are real life stories that align with what the sensory trust emphasizes, and that inclusive play fosters connection, supports emotional well-being, and ensures that all children, regardless of ability, can experience the joy and developmental benefits of play. And this flips the script by asking kids, what do you need to feel included in play? Their answers drive the design.
Yeah, that's a great point, Brianna. These are some fantastic real world solutions for inclusive initiatives happening right now. Let's take a look at what happens when we foster social inclusion. Amazing things can happen, like at Inclusion Matters. Andrea, you're going
Yeah,
to play a little clip for us?
I will play the little clip for you.
Amazing.
Okay. My friends, I am having some problems. Let me know if this is working.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
great. Okay, here we go.
Play and playgrounds are so important for children because play is the way that we learn to connect with the world. At Inclusion Matters by Shane's Inspiration, we create inclusive playgrounds and provide workshops for teachers that help them to understand the importance of social inclusion.
Fostering social inclusion for my students is so important because that gives them the opportunity to make our classroom a safe space and hopefully create a better and more inclusive world.
Let's do the sign for play. There's play. Who remembers swing? It's very similar like swing, or like play. Yep, it's kind of front and back, okay? Very good. So our education program is called Together We Are Able. The design and the intent of the program is for children to have a candid discussion around disability, experience that conversation through play, and then to sum it up at the end so that all of those perceptions and misconceptions are sort of put to rest. What does the word disability mean to you?
It means that they can't really do lots of things. They can't do the things that we could do as a person without disabilities.
Some of the misconceptions and assumptions that students talk about in that pre-conversation has to do with how they define disability. Well, if you're in a wheelchair, you can't do anything. That is common, and there's no judgment, and there can be no judgment on that with students because that is their limited experience.
Well, when I see somebody in a wheelchair, I kind of feel bad for them. Like they can't really adapt and play with me. And I think that's really sad.
During the pre-visit, because students don't feel like they're being taught or talked at, they know, okay, this is something that I can learn from. And here now are some tips and tools and tricks that I can use. And then they take off running, sometimes literally.
That second step is the playground experience. And that's where we purposefully connect children together in buddy groups. And then through play, they can physically experience everything that we talked about. The introductions are super important. You come down to eye level and we make the connection. Once they've done that and all students are comfortable, then they take the buddy and everybody explores the playground and they play.
Ooh, everybody come down low. And who's this?
My buddy was Parker, and we both had this excitement when we first met each other. I introduced myself, he introduced himself, and then that moment on, I held his hand. He just didn't let go.
I think it's really important for students in my class to understand that this is someone that you can learn from. This isn't about you helping someone. That can be part of it, certainly, but it's also about what gifts do both buddies on both ends have to bring to each other.
It makes my heart feel really warm. I just feel so good. We like playing with you, Nika. Yeah. 1, 2, 3.
And then we come back in and we do a debrief, or what we call a post conversation. And that really is a time for students from the typically developing class to synthesize what they experience. Raise your hand if you had a good time getting to know your buddy, right? Was there anything that this time with your buddy taught you?
Don't judge a book by its cover, and everybody's different in their own way, just to make sure that everybody's being included.
I like that. We have a lot more things in common than not.
I think it's really important to get kids talking about inclusivity at a wide level. My students are going to be going into a very diverse world, and the more that they're able to be inclusive of others, the better they're going to make the world around them.
The other side now.
Talk to your principal. Come up with something small that you can start with. Maybe it's a conversation at your staff meeting. If you're a general education teacher, find a special ed teacher that would want to partner with you. Start the conversation.
If I could see my students come away from the fourth grade with anything, I would want them to ultimately be strong allies for others. As a teacher, nothing would make me more proud.
Oh my goodness, that was so cute.
That was so
Awesome.
sweet.
So
No,
good.
what a great idea for educators too.
Exactly. Sorry, I'm just trying to get back to my screen. All right. Yeah, that was so amazing and it was very powerful.
Anything else special happen this weekend,
Oh.
friends?
In the pool, I did.
Oh my goodness. It went to the next video. Sorry about that, guys.
No worries.
All right, let's see. Okay, we're back to regularly scheduled programming. Okay, so it was really nice to see where every child could truly participate, connect, and feel a sense of belonging. So inclusive play is not just about the physical access. It is about happiness, empowerment, confidence, and community. I really liked when that one educator talked about gifts because it reminded me of the Indigenous ways of knowing and Indigenous knowledge. So I really liked that, and I'm glad I made that connection.
Yeah, I agree, Andrea. That was a
yeah.
really, really beautiful thought.
Yeah, and this video really beautifully captures how thoughtful design and a commitment to equity can transform play into something magical for all kids. So if you're an educator, here are 3 simple things you could do in your classroom. Observe who's playing and who's left out. Adapt materials like large crayons, sensory bins, visual cues such as I call them pet cards, PEC, pet cards. Make them big and visible because they do not just work with children with diverse needs. They all benefit our multilingual learners as well. I have a set of pet cards around my lanyard in my classroom, and I love using the so I don't have to be like shh all the time, and they all get it.
Yeah.
Right? So including diverse voices and asking families and children about their play preferences. So voice, as we've talked about in our previous podcast, families want to be heard and they want their children to be safe and happy. So ask them. Inclusion doesn't happen by accident. It takes thoughtful planning, awareness, and regular reflection.
Well said, Andrea. Inclusive play is not just about access, it's all about belonging, participation, and positive experiences for all children. It's about honoring their human rights and redesigning systems to ensure that they're seen, heard, and safe. Now, let's shift our focus to what that looks like in action, specifically how we build accessible playgrounds and make access truly inclusive for everyone. When outdoor spaces reflect the diverse needs of all children, play becomes more than just fun. It becomes a foundation for equity, connection, and belonging.
So let's talk about building accessible playgrounds. Now that we understand what inclusive play is, let's focus on something very concrete. The physical design of our playgrounds. How can we make them more accessible from the ground up?
We hear from kids, families, and educators all the time. There's so many barriers to access, and they're everywhere. Think of sand that could get trapped in wheelchair wheels, or no shaded rest spots, or equipment you can only reach by climbing a ladder, or no equipment at all.
Yeah, and even when schools meet code, that doesn't really mean that they're going to be inclusive. Kids with mobility devices, sensory sensitivities, or low energy still get left out of play.
Yeah, that's very true. Accessible playgrounds aren't just about ramps, right? They're about designing for differences. That means giving kids options for how they move, rest, and interact. It's about equity, not uniformity.
To bring in some real voices, Andrea chatted with some moms and educators in a local Facebook group that has gathered some information about what families and educators have shared with us. These are their words, what's working, and what they wish they had access to.
All right, let's see here. Oh, no. There we go. Why is it loading a whiteboard? Let me try that again. Okay. Okay, here we go. These quotes are really good. And I put them on these fancy cards, so I want to share them. All right, so one parent said some schools have recess guardians and other programs where older students run structured games. Other schools have outdoor play equipment for each classroom. Having something for students to do during unstructured recess time really helps. I've also seen some schools that run indoor small group activities during recess times for those students that can't manage the chaos on the yard. However, this can be challenging because a staff member has to supervise the group. And that was the first thing I noticed. Like, this would be fantastic, but it's hard to get all those grown-ups to be able to help with that. But another person said, as a mother of a neurodivergent child who elopes, so runs away, the amount of school grounds that aren't fenced is unnerving. Also, for a kid who's better regulated after he exerts energy, I wish the schoolyard had playground equipment. Again, many schools don't due to a myriad of reasons, but I really wish they would. And that's definitely another barrier because of liability reasons. But we can always work around this. Like, there are safe things. Another person said fenced playgrounds, communication boards for nonverbal children to use. I've actually seen this at a park near my house. They do have the PEC board there so that you can communicate. And fenced playground seems to be a reoccurring theme. So I think that is super important. Now, just let me get back to the regular screen. All right. So let's see here. Yeah, so these stories are powerful because they remind us that accessibility doesn't mean expensive and inclusion doesn't mean complicated. Often the best ideas are community driven and grounded in real needs.
That's like why we created a quick audio checklist to help school teams access their playgrounds through an inclusive lens. Inclusive playgrounds, what to look for checklist.
All right, here we go. Okay, so that was the last quote. So here's our little checklist that you can take on your next school walkabout. Can a child using a wheelchair or walker travel from the door to the play area without help? Super important. I remember we had a student and there was a little, like this big of a bump, and that affected the movement. So that's really important. Are there multiple ways to access equipment, ramps, steps, or ground level activities? Do play areas include quiet, shaded spaces for rest, calm, or social time? This blew my mind. Why did I not think of this before? Are the materials usable year round? Not icy, hot, or too loose for safe travel? Is there a range of play experiences? Climbing, building, swinging, sensory, or pretend? Are there signs or visual supports for multilingual or nonverbal children, just like that parent said? And can children play together, not just side by side? So those are our little suggestions.
Yeah, and the best part is this kind of checklist is simple, free, and actionable. It's conversation starters that help educators, admins, and families imagine what's possible.
And real solutions don't have to be high cost. We've seen schools use recycled tires for sensory swings, repurposed tree stumps that can be included in social circles, and even partnering with local businesses for donations of branches or other materials.
For sure. And one team that we know even created a mobile comm cart for recess, which included noise canceling headphones, fidgets, and visual supports on wheels. And kids knew where to go when they needed a sensory break, which was awesome.
Love that.
Mhm.
Love that.
These community driven ideas prove that when inclusion is a priority, creativity and care follows. It's not about having everything, it's about asking, listening, and adapting.
So if you're looking for where to begin, just go outside and ask yourself who's playing, who's watching, and what would it take for every child to feel joy, safety, and freedom out here. That's the heart of building accessible playgrounds.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So far, we've touched on some really important considerations when it comes to inclusive play, such great and necessary conversations that honestly needs to happen more often. One thing that I feel is especially important when discussing inclusive playgrounds is the need for sensory-friendly spaces. Playgrounds should be enjoyable for every child, and unfortunately, that's not always the case. And there are many reasons why, which we'll talk about today, but right now I really want to explore some of those and how we can improve them. I want to focus specifically on creating sensory-friendly environments, especially in playgrounds.
For sure. So I just want you to take a second and think of a time where you've actually felt overstimulated. And I think that as educators, we probably all have had moments.
Yes.
So think about walking into into a school assembly where the lights are bright, the microphone screeches, kids are chattering, and the music in the back is way too loud. You feel your shoulders tense, your brain scrambles. It's a lot, right?
100% it is. And now imagine that level of sensory overload happening every time you try to play. For a child with sensory processing challenges, even something as simple as recess or a trip to the park can feel really overwhelming.
Oh my goodness, Christine and I know all about that overwhelming gym, let me tell you.
Me
Oh
too.
my. Okay. So like we like to bring the kids outside a lot. That usually does calm them down. But when the sun is glaring in your eyes and burning your skin, and the noise of a dozen different voices, birds, traffic, the wind, even the rough texture of the playground rocks against your hands and knees, it can be overwhelming for anyone, let alone someone who already struggles with sensory processing.
So the question is, how can we create spaces for children with sensory processing disorders or other neurodivergent conditions?
We can start with the play environment and consider the physical properties of the playground, like the texture of the equipment. Offering multiple textured play zones, such as smooth and bumpy surfaces, allow children to explore different sensations.
Yeah, and on top of that, we need to think about the materials that we're using as well. So some playground materials like metal or rubber or plastic even can be dangerously hot in the summer months, and it can cause discomfort for children, especially those who feel temperatures more intensely than others do.
Yeah, and another important factor is the sound that playground equipment can make and that surfaces can produce. So, using materials that absorb sound can really help reduce echoes and other background noise, which can be overwhelming for children with auditory sensitivities.
And believe it or not, the color schemes of playgrounds can also be very overstimulating. So when designers think about building sensory-friendly playgrounds, they need to consider the palette of the equipment. So
Mhm.
soft, neutral, natural may help the children experience a more calming, enjoyable play experience.
But Andrea, at the end of the day, these suggestions really come down to the designer of playgrounds, don't they?
Yes, you're 100% right. And unfortunately, we as parents, teachers, and family members don't often advocate enough. I say this all the time. Whoever built these classrooms did not have children. So if we expect change, we need to be the ones to say it. And advocacy will lead us in the direction where designers can build play spaces where all children can enjoy and feel supported.
Which is so important, right? For all of us. So, what can we do to make playgrounds more sensory friendly beyond the structural design we don't have immediate control over?
Mm.
That's a great question, Christine. For children who are neurodiverse, a lot of the environment can be overstimulating. And as we know already, playgrounds can be a challenge for those kids. So, offering things like noise canceling headphones can be a great tool for children who really struggle with noise levels.
Oh, for sure. That's a great idea. And we use those a lot for a lot of our students with diverse needs, and it really does help them.
Yeah, totally. And we can also create a visual schedule for children, which can help build routine and reduce stress on the playground, right? So, like a first then type of schedule, something like first water, then swings, can ensure that children understand what to expect and feel more at ease.
That makes a lot of sense, Freedom. I think children can feel overwhelmed by their environment really quickly. So, something as simple as a visual schedule can really help them stay regulated and calm.
Sensory bins and sensory outdoor toys like rocking swings or spinning chairs can also be super helpful for children who struggle with sensory processing. The play materials help children find an outlet that lets them release any tension that's building in appropriate ways.
And another great and super easy tool, I've definitely used this in my experience in kindergarten, is having music on, like a calming tune that really sets the tone for relaxation while playing. It could be a huge way of just setting the play environment, and all children can benefit from using these strategies.
Oh, definitely. And the last thing that I found to be really useful is creating spaces for calming down, like quiet corners. So you can use a tent or a shaded space under a tree, even outside with books and fidget toys, and that can be a great resource for reducing overstimulation.
These are all such great ways to help children self-soothe and regulate their emotions when they're feeling overstimulated. It's also really important to consider how seasonal changes can add extra sensory challenges. So, like the sticky feeling of sunscreen in the summer or the bulky, itchy layers and tight gloves in the winter. For some children, even the cold wind on their faces can be distressing. So, keeping these factors in mind help us design play spaces that support all children all year round.
Absolutely. These strategies are a great point, but it's important to remember that every child's experiences sensory input in a differently. What works for one student might not work for the other, so it often takes some trial and error. The most important first step is getting to know your students and understanding their unique needs.
For sure. So now that we've talked about the importance of inclusive play spaces, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about what happens in those spaces, specifically how we can support social emotional inclusion through games and peer belonging during recess.
Right, because having the right equipment or space is only a part of the puzzle. If kids don't feel like they're socially included, or they feel left out of a game, or maybe they're unsure of how to join in, then is the playground really truly inclusive? That's where intentional and inclusive games and peer strategies come in.
Absolutely. One simple but powerful idea is a buddy system. So, where students are paired or grouped to foster connection and reduce isolation. Educators can also introduce cooperative games that don't rely on competition or physical ability, such as cooperative tag, where players unfreeze each other instead of tagging out. Another one could be parachute games that allow all children to participate while sitting, or standing. Follow the leader with the role swapping to give every child a turn to lead. That's a great one. Group scavenger hunts using visual cues or sensory based clues. And imagination stations where kids create stories together using props or costumes. These kinds of games shift the focus from winning to working together, giving every child a meaningful opportunity to participate and to be seen.
Those are some really great ideas, Freedom. Sometimes it takes one child modeling inclusion for it to spread. We asked a few children about their favorite inclusive games, and here's what one 6-year-old shared.
My favorite game is Animal Tag. Everybody picks an animal and moves like it. My friends can't run fast, so she is a turtle and I am a bunny. We chase each other around slowly. It's really fun.
That's such a beautiful example of how kids naturally adapt their play when
Yeah.
they're supported and giving space to be creative. When we empower them to include others, inclusion becomes normal.
Yeah, that's so true. And I came across this journal reading the other day by you and Barong, and it really stuck with me. It said inclusive play environments support not only physical participation, but also the development of friendships, emotional regulation, and positive peer identity. That really matters because when we talk about inclusion, we often focus on physical access. But true inclusion also means that children feel emotionally safe and socially connected. That quote really reminds us that belonging is just as important as access. And we build that through the games we offer, the language we model, and the relationships we help children build.
So true.
Yeah, definitely. And I've actually seen that firsthand. One time, a child in my class who had limited verbal communication loved playing the game Guess the Sound. So we played animal noises on a speaker, and the kids guessed the animal together, and it became a classroom favorite, and everybody just played all together. And he felt like a leader and not just a participant. That was really inclusion in action.
I love
I
that idea.
love that. That's so sweet. We can also teach children simple peer scripts that empower them to invite others to play. So, for example, do you want to play with us? You can be the helper. What do you want to do next? Let's play together in a way that we both like.
We can introduce these phrases through modeling, role playing, and social stories. They're especially helpful when practiced during morning meetings, shared readings, or dramatic play. These strategies build empathy and flexibility thinking in real age appropriate ways.
And one thing that works well in my classrooms is having an inclusion statement station. So by using a small cart with visuals, sensory tools, and idea cards for starting a game, kids who don't know how to join play or who want to help someone else join could go there for support. And it gives them agency and makes inclusion a part of our play culture.
Awesome.
And we can also encourage games that support emotional regulation for students who need calm, quiet play. And these could include yoga assignments as mindful movement circles, nature hunts where kids search for textures, sounds, or colors, feeling charades, where kids act out different emotions and support each other in guessing. And this type of inclusive play helps ensure that kids who don't enjoy high energy games can still find joy and connection during recess.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also great to rotate peer roles. So, for example, you can assign a peer partner of the day or an inclusion leader who checks in to make sure everyone feels included. Even young children can take this role seriously when it's introduced with care.
That's such a great point, and it goes back to the idea from you and Bearing that play isn't just about movement, it's about identity, emotional regulation, and relationships. When children feel seen and empowered on the playground, it changes how they see themselves in every setting.
It definitely does. And we can use many of these strategies in our classroom and see beautiful outcomes. I have even witnessed one student start making signs that say all friends welcome at the
Aw.
hopscotch area in my classroom. Yeah, and that kind of inclusion grows when we normalize asking, listening, and adapting together.
Yeah, it doesn't take a new playground structure or expensive tools, like we've said many times. It takes a mindset, one that centers empathy, equity, and belonging. When children feel like they truly belong, not just physically, but emotionally, it transforms recess, it transforms the classroom, and inclusion becomes a lived experience, not just an idea.
Absolutely. So now that we've spent some time exploring some great topics that sequence us perfectly into how we can make inclusion sustainable, first we actually need to talk about policy and advocacy and what it looks like to shift the system itself. So this means reviewing current school policies and intentionally redesigning them with inclusion in mind.
Exactly. Inclusion doesn't happen by accident. It needs to be written into the structure and the culture of the school. That starts reflecting on what's already in place. What are our routines? Who do they benefit? And who might be unintentionally excluded?
And this is where open pedagogy and co creation with families are so powerful. Families, especially those from marginalized communities, are often left out of these conversations, yet they carry essential knowledge about what's working and what's not. Advocacy begins with listening.
Right. And when families tell us that lunchtime recess or transitions are hard for their child, we can't just respond with a quick fix. We need to pause and ask, how do our school ride routines include or exclude? And that's where inclusive policy starts.
Right, and those everyday inclusive practices, they can absolutely be scaled up into policy. For instance, if a teacher uses visual schedules in their classroom to support all learners, that's amazing. But when a school adopts that as a standard practice across all grades, that's when we see real systemic change.
Exactly. When strategies become part of staffing onboarding or are written into the school environment improvement plan, inclusion stops being optional or extra. It actually becomes the norm, just how we do things around here.
It's also powerful to build in regular inclusive reviews. Who's participating in assembly? Who's constantly pulled out of class or missing
Mm.
school events? Patterns like that tell us where barriers still exist and where policies need to evolve.
Yeah, I agree with you, Christine. And advocacy doesn't have to mean protesting at the school board. It can start with everyday collective action. A caregiver requesting flexible seating, that's advocacy. A group of educators is rewriting the supervision schedule so that more kids are supported during recess. That's shifting the system.
I love that framing. Collective action is where change really gains momentum when caregivers, educators, students, and administrators work together and say, this isn't working. How can we change it? That's where transformation really begins.
Mm-hmm.
And don't underestimate the power of student voice, like we talked about in our last podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Kids know what feels fair or unfair. When we include them in conversation about routines, behavior, plans, and classroom dynamics, we're showing them that they have agency too.
Definitely. So if you're looking for where to start, here's 3 powerful entry points. So the first one is audit a policy or routine. So whether it's hallway transitions, discipline procedures, or recess expectations, ask who benefits and who might be left out. Number 2, create space for authentic feedback. So not just anonymous surveys, but real conversations with families and students. And number 3, advocate for one small system level change. So, and that really means connect it to inclusion and equity, and one ripple can spark more.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. When you try something new, document it, collect stories, take pictures, share successes, use that evidence to show school leadership or boards how inclusion works in practice and why it should be embedded more broadly.
It's so important to remember that inclusion is a policy issue, not just a classroom practice. It shows up in budgets, staffing decisions, training models, and board-level planning. Are schools funding support roles? Are admins being trained in universal design? Are EAs and the lunchroom staff part of the inclusion conversation?
Exactly. EAs are the backbones to most schools.
Yes.
They're so important.
100%.
We can't separate inclusive pedagogy from the system that shapes it. If the infrastructure isn't there to support inclusion, then even the best intentions won't stick. That's why policy and advocacy are non-negotiable.
And let's be clear, inclusion it shouldn't be, it isn't optional. It's a human right. Embedding inclusion into policies helps us move from intention to accountability. It makes sure every child is seen, heard, and supported. It's not just in theory, but in practice.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so thank you all for this powerful conversation. For those listening, if you're using this episode as part of your professional learning, here are some reflection prompts. So, what systems in your school might unintentionally exclude students? Who do you feel need to collaborate with to make meaningful change? And how can you center family and student voices throughout? Shifting systems isn't easy, but it is possible.
So as you step into your role as a teacher candidate, or if you're continuing your journey as an educator, remember this: creating inclusive playgrounds isn't just about equipment. It's about equity, empathy, and ensuring every child feels like they belong. When we intentionally design and support play spaces that reflect all children's needs, we're building more than just a playground. We're building community. So keep showing up, keep listening, and keep learning. We've got more practical strategies coming up. Until then, keep your hearts open, your coffee warm, and remember, every child deserves a place to play and a place to belong.
That's
Absolutely.
right. We want to hear from you. So, what topics should we cover next? Like and subscribe and add your comments or suggestions down below.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening.
Every discussion matters. For more meaningful discussions in education, tune in next time, right here on Hear Me Out. Don't miss out on the conversations that shape our classrooms and communities.